The importance of clothes cannot be overstated. More than our actual bodies, when we meet someone, more of our clothes are seen than our bodies. Evolving from a place of necessity and functionality, clothes have come to mean something more than just a way to protect ourselves from the elements of the weather. They are ways to express ourselves, ways to show individual style, a want to stand out, a way to express you have a different career, a way to be able to tell where someone else is from. Throughout history, there have also been ways to signal class, luxury, social standing. In India, clothes are as vast and varying as the number of people we have, as the number of cultures this place has fostered. But there's also growing homogeneity in clothes. As we become more and more westernized, more and more anglicized, we do see larger trends of more people dressing the same way. And as a result, creation of new types of Western Indian clothes and also divisions of people based on how they dress. This video is about chappri fashion. If you don't know what chappri means, it is fair to say it would be an internet slang, as most of us would know. It came about when TikTok came about in India. And TikTok came about in India after a surge in number of internet users thanks to Jio. A lot of parts of India got access to internet for the first time, were able to buy smartphones and post themselves online, create communities, share videos, jokes, funny videos, get famous, make money, and so on. As more and more Indians met each other on this virtual sphere, lots of new terms came about. Some good, some bad, some merely descriptive. And so came about the slang chappri. If you try to find the meaning of chappri, it might be described as someone who has uncool fashion sense. If you try to look at memes, they would use various characteristics to describe what chappri fashion is or how to dress like a chappri. They would revolve around wearing bold items of clothing, ripped clothes, having loud hairstyles, and varying personality traits. But chappri does not just mean this overall fashion style. Chappri is actually a castiest slur that was used to refer to oppressed classes of people whose only job was mending roofs, because that was the only job that was assigned to them at their birth. So while a lot of people think of chappri as just someone with quote-unquote bad fashion sense, it actually has darker origins, so I will not be using this word. Instead, I will be referring to this general style of local Western Indian fashion as local Indian fashion. Of course, this doesn't mean all of Indian local fashion is this way. It's hard to label something as vast as this. The reason I was interested in making this video was because I was really curious at the intersection of where Western clothing met Indian fashion and this unique form of clothing came about. So, how did local Indian fashion come about? At a cursory glance, it can be generally said that local Indian fashion is based more in Indian villages, smaller cities, or sections of inner cities in bigger Indian cities, where people might generally be wearing more Indian traditional clothes as their daily clothes. So you would see women in colorful saris, men with big turbans, and various other local traditional attires that are specific to the region you're living in. These clothes tend to be colorful, have unique characteristics, and express a person's religion, culture, livelihood, and more. And they are not minimalist in the sense of they're not a plain white t-shirt with beige pants. They have other things that stand out in them, like flowy clothing details, tailored garments, the way our sari is wrapped, head turbans, head wraps, jewelry, unique footwear that makes traditional clothing stand out, that makes it different from jeans and a t-shirt. So when children grow up looking at such traditional clothing, their idea of what good clothes are can be more geared towards clothes that are bold, have bright colors, lots of embellishment and details, and stand out in similar ways. It can mean when they go out to buy their own clothes and try to look for something Western, they go for choices that are similarly bold, have lots of details and embellishments, help them stand out, and are closer to what traditional Indian clothes are in their basic elements. In smaller villages, towns, Western clothes can also be seen as exotic in some ways, as something sexy, and wearing them might have certain connotations, like if you're wearing Western clothes, you might be going to a party, might be going out to a restaurant with your friends, and so they need to look like going out clothes rather than casual clothes. Therefore, when people shop for Western clothes, they would look for something that has more to that outfit than just plainness or functionality. A major point of media influence that impacted Indian audiences in both rural and urban areas was, and still is to an extent, Bollywood. Bollywood was a cataclysmic force that defined fashion choices and gender norms for millions of Indians. Given the theatre background of Bollywood, it had a lot of over the top features like dance sequences, heroes and heroines with over the top outfits that were not necessarily what you'd see regular Indians wear, but were a flashier, more colorful version of what you'd see someone wearing. It would be fair to say that these eye catching outfits affected what Indians thought of as Western clothing and set the norm for what Western clothing should look like. Of course, this extravagant stood in direct competition with what would be called elegant. Elegance can have its own colonial definitions of what is defined as elegant by the elite versus unkempt. Local Indian fashion and the derogatory term chappri is another version of that, where the term stands in direct opposition to a term like sober. Local Indian fashion is in many ways class defining. It must also be noted that the way Western clothes are sold in India is not the same everywhere. In smaller villages and towns, bigger chain brands like H&M, Zara, Uniqlo, just to name a few, big companies with worldwide branches that base their clothes on international fashion trends and that actually define what cool can mean to the mainstream are not present. Smaller towns and even bigger cities have a lot of local Western clothing stores. Stores that are more like mom and pop stores, where there might be one person who is the wholesale buyer who chooses the kind of clothes he wants to keep in his shop and what the customers might find attractive. These clothing stores have more local understanding, more on the grounds level understanding of what kind of clothes appeal to the mainstream local Indian audiences. As a result, these clothes have more individuality to them. Unlike H&M, where multiple pieces of the same style of clothes are manufactured to provide a factory-esque production of clothes, these local stores have unique pieces that might be hard to find in any other store. That does mean every time you buy something, you're going to get something completely different. Another thing to note is that local clothing stores might not have access to the best quality fabrics. This does not mean fast fashion companies have access to better fabrics, but that in general, local stores might have products that have more elastane in them, products that have more nylon, and plastic-based fabrics rather than pure fabrics. Their tailors themselves might have a different understanding of how jeans are supposed to fit or how t-shirts are supposed to fit. The very way their clothes are designed might be different, leading to some unique ways of styling. Jackets, shirts, tops, dresses. The Indian supply chain of clothes goes beyond stores and malls, local Indian fashion. It has other interesting markets like Sarojini Market in Delhi, pop-up stores in bazaars, seasonal clothing items set by people from colder regions. And while Sarojini Market is famous because of how big it is in Delhi, there are many markets akin to Sarojini markets that are all over India, where clothes are sold at extremely affordable prices. These would be prices like 50 rupees, 100 rupees for a shirt or a pair of pants. Where do these clothes come from? What kind of fabric is in these clothes? Who made these clothes? These are all questions that are hard to answer because they don't have a lot of official formal documentation of what the composition of these clothes are. Even clothes in more famous markets like Sarojini Market come from brands like Zara, H&M, Tommy Hilfiger, and other famous brands, but at much cheaper prices. Some suspect these clothes come from stolen warehouse goods, stolen ship goods, come from second-hand stores in foreign countries. But that is all to say that local Indian fashion can mean a mishmash of clothes from all over the place. Designing, manufacturing of these clothes and their elusive origins make for this certain type of fashion to exist. Looking at a wider scale, trends are an amorphous thing. Sometimes things get picked up in the vast majority, and by the time you realize something has been picked up, it's already too late, and you feel like you're copying a trend that has gone by. Bigger companies adjust to these trends in different ways, but smaller stores do it differently. In smaller stores, your ability to adjust to trends goes down dramatically. So, while bigger stores might first of all have access to newer trends sooner, have this because they have larger resources to always be on the lookout for what's being picked up. They might have analysts looking at what people might be wearing 1 year from now. Local stores would just be basing their preferences of what to buy, what to tell their manufacturers to create based on what they think the customers might want or what the customers might already want. So while you could say it leads to clothes that are not on trend, it also creates its own style and its own unique fashion. Of course, speaking specifically of style, when we look at local Indian fashion, a lot of it can be compared to Y2K style. Y2K was an era in the early 2000s which was marked by similarly bold clothing, questionable fashion choices, lots of sequins, bows, furry boots, and this was actually labeled the uglification of clothes. The reason fashion companies started doing this was because in the early 2000s, internet was just starting to become a thing. People were able to share pictures of clothes online, send it to their friends, be like, I want to buy this, or lol, this is really funny. And so companies started doing this thing where they would purposely make clothing items that would make you go so bad that you want to share it with your friends, that you want to laugh at it. And because it was being shared, that would mean that company is getting free press, it's getting fame, it's getting famous. So companies were purposely making ugly clothes to go viral. This can tie in pretty accurately with the way local Indian fashion became a thing in India around TikTok, because it was people with extreme hairstyles, clothing choices that were going viral on TikTok and continued going viral on Instagram. So there was an appeal to looking so different that people pause their endless scrolling and actually give you more than half a second of their attention. And this is how local Indian fashion really came to hit its peak. While I have been referring to local Indian fashion as local Indian fashion, it is more than that. Here I have another fashion subculture. This fashion subculture is of people called shamate in China. They were mostly people who were from smaller provinces in China and came to bigger cities like Beijing to do work according to the season. They also had a very lively internet community and their own unique styles of dressing that were bold, courageous, outrageous, would make people stare. Shamata were also a ostracized community in some ways, where a lot of cooler, richer Chinese people thought of them more as a joke and did not really interact with them. Looking deeper into the Shamata, this man who basically created and named this group, where Shamata means cool, describes how they came to this new place in Beijing from their local provinces, and besides doing menial work in big Chinese factories, fashion was a unique hobby for them. It added something special to their lives. It was a good distraction from what was going on and the mundane nature of it all. When we look at local Indian fashion today, we might find similar characteristics. Being from smaller cities, inner cities, towns, a lot of the youth who are poster children for local Indian fashion might not have the most optimistic ideas about their future. It's expensive and difficult to get into a good university in India, get a good education, and even after passing all those checks, there's a big unemployment crisis in India where a lot of people aren't able to get jobs, and the jobs they do get aren't particularly nice. So, the ability to dream and think big might be going down, and so in villages and towns where a lot of youth feel like there is no escape from the life their parents have lived and find the future bleak with the inability to leave their places and be able to climb the social ladder through education or business because of lack of funds or anything. Clothes and fashion are a good distraction. They are a way to feel powerful, and they are also a signal that this person wants to do their own thing and stand out. I made a comparison earlier between local Indian fashion and bigger brands like H&M. I would like to further expound on this and talk about how a fashion trickles down from magazines and fashion shows all the way to what we can buy in art stores. Of course, if your budget is unlimited, you can buy clothes directly from the runway. Every season, fall, winter, summer, autumn, fashion shows happen in fashionable cities, big cities like New York, Milan, Paris, and their big companies, the ultra luxury and elite companies, gather to showcase what their vision for the season is, what they're feeling at the moment. Independent designers that are well liked by their colleagues also get to present in these elite fashion shows where the biggest supermodels of our time strut wearing these clothes that are supposed to represent the present as fresh as you can get it. In these fashion shows, there are media outlets from everywhere ready to report on what the vision for the season is going to be. Celebrities, other models, athletes, movie stars, performers, other rich people, conglomerates, children of billionaires. All these ultra rich people gather together in these fashion shows, and for them the runway is actually an H&M store or your local fashion store, and they get to choose what they want to buy, and they negotiate with the designer or the company, and they wear those clothes to public events, big galas, award shows, and as we the public, we see these clothes in these fashion magazines, on the runway, pictures taken by the paparazzi. And this has a trickle-down effect where people want to wear clothes like the one they saw Lady Gaga wear, like the one they saw Selena Gomez wear, the one they're seeing Sabrina Carpenter wear, the one they're seeing Shah Rukh Khan's daughter wear, and we demand clothes like that. And slowly fashion companies start adjusting to what consumers want. And they can't immediately mass manufacture clothes like this because, number one, the style, the fashion, the fabrics are all very high quality, very difficult to make. So those fashion companies make a bastardized version of it and sell it off to the masses. Then we have another bastardized version of it that's sold in more fast fashion companies, and the faster a company can pick up on this, the more money they're able to make, because that's the most in fashion thing. And when people are done seeing each other wearing what the fashionable thing is, it slowly trickles down to local fashion levels, dictating what people want to buy. This is how things happened traditionally, I feel, but of course internet has changed that, where now you may like kawaii fashion from Japan and want to wear that, where there's more micro niches of what kind of clothes you want to wear. But because of this trickle down effect of fashion and what stylish means, local Indian fashion, chappri, is a bigger discussion of what cool means, of what brand means, of what fitting in, what standing out means. Is fitting in wearing local Indian fashion, or is fitting in wearing clothes from Studio? Is fitting in wearing clothes from Zara? What is fitting in? As more and more of our culture develops and capitalism develops, people's spending power increases, middle grounds between middle grounds increase. So stores like Studio pop up that are run by large, rich conglomerates, and they control what they want to sell, and they're able to mass manufacture goods at a cheaper rate, thereby diluting the market with their products and changing what local Indian fashion is. And speaking of tastes in general, we also have the beige apocalypse, where more and more people want to wear pastel color clothing in weddings, where India itself shifts more towards cooler, beiger palettes, earthy tones, plain simplicity. And what does it mean on a bigger scale? Does it mean we are trying to shut off color, that we're leaning more towards Western palettes? Maybe the overstimulation of our phones, our city lives, makes us crave simpler clothing choices in general? Well, it could mean a lot of things, but these were my thoughts on local Indian fashion, and I'd love to hear what you think.